Chapter 1. The Dream of Home. The Taylor family, an African-American family in the 1950s, dreams of home ownership as a means of securing a better future. Living in a segregated neighborhood, plagued by underfunded schools and deteriorating infrastructure, they long for a safer, more prosperous environment for their children. James Taylor, a hard-working factory worker, and his wife Margaret, a devoted school teacher, have spent years carefully budgeting and saving every penny, determined to escape the confines of racial segregation and carve out a new life for their family. After extensive searching, they discover a modest yet well-maintained home in a predominantly white neighborhood. The house has a small front yard where their children, David and Sarah, imagine playing freely without fear. Margaret envisions a garden where she can grow flowers, and James sees a space where the family can finally experience stability and peace. Their excitement is immeasurable. The dream of home ownership seems closer than ever. Yet unknown to them, an invisible wall stands between their aspirations and reality: systemic racism embedded within the housing market. They are unaware that policies such as redlining and restrictive covenants exist to prevent black families from moving into white neighborhoods. The excitement that fills their hearts will soon be overshadowed by an unjust system designed to keep them out. As the Taylors prepare to take the next step in securing their future, they do not yet realize that their battle will extend far beyond finances. Their journey toward home ownership will not just be about acquiring property. It will become a fight for justice, dignity, and the right to be treated as equal citizens in their own country. Chapter 2. The Denial. Excited about their potential new home, James and Margaret Taylor apply for a mortgage, confident in their financial stability and the years of sacrifice that led them to this moment. James has a steady job at a local factory, and Margaret is a respected school teacher. Their credit is strong, their savings are sufficient, and they meet every requirement expected of homebuyers. Yet, their application is swiftly denied. Confused, they press for an explanation. The loan officer, avoiding eye contact, claims that the neighborhood they wish to buy into is high risk, implying that their investment would not be secure. However, James and Margaret know that white families with similar or even lower incomes have been approved for homes in the same area. Each rejection they face is accompanied by vague reasoning: not the right financial profile, loan unavailable for this area, or we're unable to approve at this time. What they do not yet realize is that they are not being denied because of their finances, but because of the color of their skin. Determined to understand why they are being turned away, Margaret researches housing policies and stumbles upon a troubling term: redlining. Through conversations with neighbors, civil rights leaders, and legal advocates, she learns that redlining is the practice of systematically denying loans and financial services to black families attempting to move into predominantly white neighborhoods. Banks and lenders use coded language and discriminatory maps to mark black communities as undesirable, while approving white applicants with fewer qualifications. As the Taylors dig deeper, they realize the extent of the injustice. They are not the first family to experience this, nor will they be the last. Across the country, black families are being confined to segregated, underfunded neighborhoods by policies designed to keep them from accessing better opportunities. What seemed like an isolated rejection now reveals itself as part of a much larger, systemic issue. Crushed, but not defeated, James and Margaret refuse to let this be the end of their journey. Instead of giving up, they begin to seek answers and solutions, determined to fight against a system that has denied them their basic right to home ownership. Chapter 3. A Community Fights Back. Determined to challenge the discrimination they face, the Taylors reach out to local civil rights leaders, hoping to find guidance in their struggle for equal housing rights. Through community meetings and grassroots networks, they meet other Black families who have faced the same injustices. Stories of redlining, intimidation, and institutional barriers preventing them from owning homes in white neighborhoods. These stories reinforce what James and Margaret already suspect. They are not alone in this fight. Community leaders and activists, many of whom have been challenging segregationist policies for years, educate the Taylors about legal loopholes and the systematic tactics used to exclude Black families from home ownership. These leaders are organizing a movement, calling for collective action to challenge unfair housing practices. James and Margaret decide to join them, fueled by a sense of duty not only to their own family, but to others who have been wronged. The community mobilizes through organized protests outside banks that refuse to grant loans to Black families. They distribute pamphlets exposing redlining practices, file petitions demanding federal investigations, and encourage families to speak out against the discrimination they have endured. Margaret, drawing from her background as an educator, writes letters to newspapers and influential figures detailing the injustices that families like hers face daily. Despite threats from those who want to maintain the racial divide, the Taylors remain committed to the fight. As protests gain traction, the local and national media begin to take notice, shining a light on the unfair housing policies that have plagued Black communities for generations. James and Margaret find strength in the resilience of their neighbors and the growing solidarity within their community. Together, they are not just fighting for a house, they are fighting for justice, dignity, and the right to dream of a better future. Chapter 4. The Threats Begin. As the Taylors become more vocal in their fight, they face growing hostility which escalates beyond mere rejection from banks and real estate agencies. Their activism does not go unnoticed. Neighbors in the white community begin to retaliate in increasingly aggressive ways. At first it is subtle, cold stares when they walk through the neighborhood, whispered conversations that fall silent when they approach, and exclusion from public spaces where they once felt welcome. However, as their legal battle gains traction, the hostility turns to outright threats. One evening, they receive an anonymous letter in their mailbox. The words, written in jagged handwriting, carry a chilling warning. "Stay in your place or you'll regret it." Margaret clutches the letter, her hands trembling, as James reassures her that they will not be intimidated. However, the threats do not stop there. Phone calls with no voice on the other end become frequent. Their home address is scrawled on public buildings with hateful messages, and a brick is thrown through their apartment window in the dead of night. The police show little interest in investigating these acts of intimidation, dismissing them as random mischief. One night, as James drives past the house they are still fighting to own, he is horrified to see the words "Keep Out" spray-painted in red across the front door. The windows have been smashed, and their mailbox has been ripped from its post. The reality of what they are up against settles in. The opposition is no longer just an abstract legal battle. It is an everyday fight for their safety and dignity. The children, once excited about their new home, now feel an underlying fear that their family's determination might come at too great a cost. Despite the threats, James and Margaret refuse to give in. They know that their struggle is part of a much larger battle for justice, not only for themselves, but for every Black family facing the same systemic barriers. They refuse to let fear dictate their future. Instead, they double down on their efforts, joining hands with activists and supporters who rally behind them. The fight is far from over, but they stand firm, knowing that their resilience is the greatest weapon against those who seek to silence them. Chapter 5. A legal battle. With the support of lawyers and civil rights organizations, the Taylors take legal action against the banks and real estate agencies engaging in redlining. Filing a lawsuit against multiple lending institutions, they allege systematic racial discrimination in housing policies. The case attracts the attention of local newspapers, then national media outlets, exposing the unethical practices of financial institutions that have long operated in the shadows. Civil rights groups rally behind them, seeing the case as an opportunity to set a precedent for Black families across the country. However, their legal battle is met with fierce resistance. Banks hire high-profile lawyers to discredit the Taylors, claiming that their financial standing was simply not strong enough and denying that race played any role in the rejection of their mortgage applications. Real estate agencies refuse to release records, stalling the case with endless procedural delays. James and Margaret quickly realize that the institutions they are up against are not just financially powerful, but deeply embedded in the very system they are trying to reform. The proceedings become grueling, stretching for months, then years. The Taylors must relive the discrimination they faced repeatedly in courtroom depositions. They listen as bank executives and real estate agents fabricate justifications for their actions, twisting facts to protect themselves. The burden of proof rests heavily on James and Margaret, forcing their legal team to gather extensive evidence of widespread redlining practices. Witness testimonies from other Black families who faced similar denials strengthen their case, making it clear that the Taylors' experience was not an isolated incident, but part of a systemic problem. As the battle drags on, the pressure intensifies. The financial strain on the Taylors is immense, with mounting legal fees and lost wages due to time spent in court. Their community, while supportive, begins to show signs of fatigue. Some fear the repercussions of standing against powerful institutions. Margaret finds herself questioning whether the fight is worth the personal cost. But James refuses to back down, believing that their struggle is part of something much larger than themselves. Despite the hardships, their case becomes a landmark fight for fair housing. As awareness grows, politicians and activists begin pushing for policy changes. The Taylors' struggle, once just a single family's battle, is now at the center of a national conversation. Their perseverance and refusal to give up become symbols of resilience, proving that justice, though delayed, is always worth fighting for. Chapter 6. The Cost of Resistance. As the lawsuit drags on, the Taylors find themselves facing mounting hardships, testing not only their resilience but also their very belief in the fight for justice. The legal proceedings stretch on longer than they had ever anticipated, with each new court date requiring time away from work, further straining their already limited finances. What started as a righteous stand against discrimination now feels like an endless battle against a system designed to exhaust them into submission. James, once valued at his job for his hard work and reliability, begins to experience workplace discrimination after his employer learns of his activism. Subtle at first, fewer hours assigned, increased scrutiny over minor mistakes, it soon becomes outright hostility. His manager calls him into the office, warning that causing trouble in the community could affect his future at the company. When James refuses to back down, he is demoted, his wages cut significantly. The loss of income threatens everything they have worked for, forcing them to dip into their dwindling savings just to cover legal expenses and daily needs. Margaret, too, feels the weight of their struggle in her personal life. Friends who once supported her from a distance now avoid her, unwilling to be associated with the controversy. Some whisper that she is going too far, that some fights aren't meant to be won. Even fellow teachers at the school where she has worked for years now look at her with caution, worried that aligning with her could put their own positions at risk. The isolation is painful, but Margaret refuses to let it break her spirit. She reminds herself that she is fighting not just for their family, but for generations to come. Their children, David and Sarah, once excited about the prospect of a new home, now feel the sting of their parents' struggle in their daily lives. At school, they face bullying from classmates whose parents disapprove of the Taylors' activism. "Your family doesn't belong here," they hear whispered in the hallways. Sarah comes home in tears one day after a classmate tells her that their fight is pointless and that no one wants them in the neighborhood. Margaret and James do their best to shield them, reminding them that their actions are paving the way for a better future. But the toll is undeniable. The weight of the battle is being felt in every corner of their lives. As their financial savings continue to dwindle, James and Margaret are forced to ask themselves whether the fight is truly worth the cost. They spend long nights sitting at the kitchen table, hands clasped, weighing their options. Giving up would be easy. Walking away from the legal battle, staying in their current situation, and avoiding further suffering. But to do so would mean surrendering not just for themselves, but for every Black family fighting to break free from systemic oppression. Through the exhaustion, the pain, and the fear, they remain steadfast. They remind themselves of why they started this journey in the first place. Not for comfort, but for justice. They realize that their struggle is no longer just about their family. It is about future generations, about creating a world where no one else will have to endure what they are facing. And so, despite the sacrifices, despite the hardships, they choose to keep fighting, knowing that true change has never come without a cost. Chapter 7. A glimmer of hope. After months of exhausting legal battles, the Taylors finally see a breakthrough. The court, after reviewing extensive evidence of racial discrimination in housing practices, delivers a historic ruling. The bank must reconsider the Taylors' mortgage application without racial bias. The decision sends ripples through the real estate and banking industries, marking the first time in their city's history that a Black family has successfully challenged redlining in court. The judge's words ring in the courtroom. Fair lending is not a privilege, it is a right. For James and Margaret, this moment is both a victory and a moment of reflection. They have spent months fighting for something that should have been theirs without resistance, a home, a safe place to raise their children. While they are relieved to have won the case, they are painfully aware that their struggle is far from over. Redlining is not eradicated by a single court decision. They know that for every family that wins a case like theirs, hundreds more remain trapped by systemic discrimination. As news of their victory spreads, activists and civil rights leaders hail the case as a turning point in the battle for fair housing. Newspapers run headlines that read, "Taylor's Triumph, a new era for housing rights," Their story inspires other Black families who have faced similar struggles to step forward and demand justice. Margaret receives letters from families across the country, thanking her for her courage. Community meetings grow larger, with people eager to discuss their own experiences and explore ways to fight back against housing discrimination. Despite the celebration, James and Margaret remain cautious. They know that while the ruling is a powerful statement against injustice, it does not automatically dismantle the barriers that have kept Black families out of white neighborhoods for generations. Banks will still find ways to manipulate policies, and racist attitudes in many communities will not change overnight. The Taylors also fear retaliation. Those who oppose their case may not accept defeat easily. As they prepare to reapply for their mortgage, the Taylors understand that their fight was never just about securing a house. It has become a movement, a symbol of resistance against a deeply flawed system. They are determined to continue advocating for fair housing laws, knowing that true change will require continuous effort, not just from them, but from every person who believes in justice and equality. Their battle has ignited a spark, one that they hope will grow into a flame of lasting transformation. Chapter 8. The house becomes a home. The Taylors finally move into their new home, but their struggles do not end at the doorstep. Their arrival is met with a wave of mixed reactions. Some neighbors peer at them suspiciously from their windows, their silence speaking louder than words. Others openly display their disapproval, refusing to return greetings, crossing the street to avoid them, or engaging in whispered conversations that abruptly stop when James or Margaret walks by. The message is clear: they are not welcome. Despite the tension, the Taylors are determined to stand their ground. Margaret decorates the home with warmth and care, filling the space with family photographs and books that tell the stories of their ancestors. James spends weekends tending to the garden, planting flowers that symbolize resilience and hope. Their children, David and Sarah, face their own set of challenges. At school, they endure subtle but painful reminders that they are different. Teachers offer lukewarm encouragement, and classmates hesitate to befriend them, influenced by the prejudices of their parents. Yet, they hold their heads high, carrying the quiet strength of their family's sacrifices. Amidst the hostility, glimmers of hope begin to emerge. A progressive family down the street offers a warm welcome, bringing over a homemade pie and inviting them to community events. An elderly couple waves to them each morning, sharing friendly conversation and words of encouragement. Slowly, small moments of kindness begin to outweigh the cold stares and silent rejections. Over time, the Taylors' presence in the neighborhood becomes impossible to ignore. They refuse to be pushed out or intimidated into submission. Margaret joins the local school board, advocating for better resources for all children, while James participates in neighborhood meetings, voicing the importance of diversity and inclusion. Their home, once a symbol of exclusion, gradually transforms into a beacon of resistance and change. The very street that once sought to shut them out is now forced to confront its own biases. Though the road ahead is still difficult, the Taylors find solace in the small victories. One friendly wave, one genuine conversation, one step closer to true belonging. Their battle is no longer just about housing. It is about proving that they, like anyone else, have the right to build a life wherever they choose. And so, with quiet determination and unshaken resolve, they continue to plant their roots, knowing that their presence is part of a greater fight for justice and equality. Chapter 9. A movement grows. The Taylors' fight against redlining does not go unnoticed. As their case gains traction, it sparks conversations across the country about the systemic barriers Black families face in homeownership. The courage and resilience James and Margaret display inspire civil rights organizations, legal advocates, and community leaders to intensify their efforts to dismantle discriminatory housing policies. What began as a single family's battle transforms into a nationwide movement for housing equality. Activists begin lobbying for legislative changes, calling for stricter regulations against discriminatory lending practices. Protest marches flood city streets, with demonstrators carrying signs that read, "Housing rights are civil rights," and "End redlining now." Politicians take notice, and hearings are held in Congress to investigate the extent of racial discrimination in real estate. James and Margaret, once hesitant to step into the public eye, now find themselves testifying before lawmakers, sharing their experience to shed light on the widespread injustice plaguing communities like theirs. As their story spreads, legal victories begin to mount. More families file lawsuits against banks and real estate agencies, armed with the Taylors' case as precedent. Newspapers report on the growing momentum, exposing the extent of redlining and its devastating impact on Black wealth and opportunity. Economic studies emerge, providing undeniable proof that generations of Black families have been systematically locked out of home ownership, reinforcing cycles of poverty and segregation. The pressure builds, and after years of advocacy, the fight reaches a turning point. In 1968, Congress passes the Fair Housing Act, making racial discrimination in housing illegal. The law is a historic milestone, but James and Margaret understand that legislation alone will not erase decades of systemic exclusion. Banks may still find loopholes, and attitudes in many communities remain resistant to change. They continue their work, pushing for stronger enforcement of fair housing laws and advocating for financial literacy programs to empower Black families to secure home ownership. James and Margaret, once the victims of an unjust system, become symbols of perseverance. They travel to different cities, sharing their story and encouraging others to stand up for their rights. Their experience fuels a new generation of activists determined to dismantle institutional racism in housing. Though their journey was fraught with hardship, they now see the power of their fight. Their struggle was not just about one home, but about paving the way for justice, equity, and the right to dream without limits. Chapter 10: A Legacy of Strength. Years later, the impact of the Taylors' struggle is woven into the very fabric of their community. What was once an exclusionary neighborhood has transformed into a symbol of progress, now home to families of various backgrounds. The sidewalks that once carried whispered disapproval now echo with the laughter of children from different ethnicities playing together, embodying the hard-fought change that the Taylors helped bring about. Their children, David and Sarah, having witnessed the sacrifices their parents made for a better future, take up the mantle of advocacy. David becomes a civil rights attorney, dedicated to ensuring that no family has to endure the same struggles his parents faced. Sarah, inspired by Margaret's resilience, becomes a community organizer, working to provide financial literacy programs for marginalized families seeking home ownership. Their work reflects the values instilled in them through their parents' unwavering fight for justice. The home they fought so hard for is no longer just a physical structure. It has become a living testament to resilience, perseverance, and change. Its walls, once threatened by hostility and vandalism, now bear framed newspaper clippings of the legal battle that set a precedent. Its front porch, once a place of fear, now welcomes guests who come to learn about the Taylors' story and seek inspiration for their own fights against injustice. As the years pass, the Taylors' names become a beacon of hope in the fight for housing equality. Their struggle, once confined to their own survival, has fueled a movement that continues to push for justice nationwide. Though James and Margaret have long since retired, their legacy lives on in every family that is able to break free from systemic discrimination and achieve the dream of homeownership. The fight was never just about a house. It was about dignity, equality, and the right to claim space in a world that once sought to keep them out. In the small, unassuming town of Ashland, nestled in the rolling hills of Virginia, there is a history that the town has tried to forget. It is a history of racial tension and injustice, a history that has been buried beneath layers of silence and denial. But the past has a way of resurfacing, and in Ashland, it begins with a simple act of defiance. A group of 5 friends, Amara, a passionate and outspoken high school teacher, Devon, a quiet and introspective artist, Simone, a determined and ambitious journalist, Malik, a charismatic and dedicated community organizer, and Zara, a thoughtful and empathetic social worker, decide to confront the town's buried past. They are driven by a desire for truth and justice, and by a belief that the only way to move forward is to acknowledge and address the sins of the past. The catalyst for their journey is a discovery made by Amara in the basement of the high school where she teaches. While cleaning out an old storage room, she stumbles upon a dusty, forgotten box filled with photographs and documents from the 1960 PS. The images depict a series of silent marches that took place in Ashland, organized by the town's black residents to protest racial segregation and discrimination. The photographs are haunting, capturing the determination and resilience of the marchers, as well as the hostility and violence they faced from the town's white population. Amara is deeply moved by the images, and she shares them with her friends, sparking a conversation about the town's history and its impact on the present. The friends decide to investigate further, hoping to uncover the full story behind the silent marches. They visit the town's library, where they find old newspaper articles and personal accounts that shed light on the events of the 1960s. They learn that the marches were met with fierce resistance, and that the town's leaders had done everything in their power to suppress the protests and silence the voices of the black community. Simone, the journalist, is particularly struck by the stories of the marchers. She interviews elderly residents who participated in the marches, listening to their accounts of courage and sacrifice. One woman, in particular, stands out to her, a woman named Ruth, who was a young mother at the time of the marches. Ruth shares her story with Simone, describing the fear and determination that drove her to join the protests. Ruth's story is one of quiet strength and unwavering resolve. She speaks of the threats and intimidation she faced, but also of the sense of solidarity and purpose that sustained her and her fellow marchers. Her words inspire Simone, and she becomes determined to tell the story of the silent marches and the people who risked everything to fight for their rights. As the friends delve deeper into the town's history, they begin to experience strange occurrences. They hear whispers in the wind, echoes of the past that seem to call out to them. They feel a presence, a connection to the people who lived through the marches and the struggles that followed. Devon, the artist, is particularly affected by these experiences. He begins to have vivid dreams of the marches and the people who participated in them. In his dreams, he sees the faces of the marchers and feels their fear and determination. The dreams are both terrifying and enlightening, and they leave him with a sense of urgency to capture their stories through his art. Devon begins to create a series of paintings inspired by the silent marches. His work is raw and powerful, capturing the essence of the struggle and the resilience of the human spirit. His paintings become a way for him to process his emotions and connect with the past. And they also serve as a powerful reminder of the town's hidden history. The friends also encounter resistance from some members of the community who are uncomfortable with their efforts to uncover the truth. They face criticism and hostility, and some even accuse them of trying to stir up trouble. But the friends remain undeterred, driven by a belief in the importance of truth and justice. Malik, the community organizer, works tirelessly to rally support for their cause. He organizes meetings and events, bringing together people from all walks of life to discuss the town's history and its impact on the present. His efforts help to build a coalition of allies, united in their commitment to confront the past and work towards a more just and equitable future. As the friends continue their work, they realize that the silent marches were just the beginning of a long and ongoing struggle for civil rights in Ashland. They learn about the many challenges and setbacks that the Black community has faced over the years, and the courage and perseverance of those who have fought for change. Zara, the social worker, focuses her efforts on supporting the mental health and well-being of the community. She organizes workshops and support groups, providing a space for people to share their experiences and find healing. Her work helps to build resilience and strength within the community, and it also serves as a reminder of the importance of compassion and empathy in the fight for justice. In the end, the friends succeed in bringing the story of the silent marches to light. Their efforts help to spark a conversation about the town's history and its legacy of racism and injustice. They know that the road to justice is long and difficult, but they are united in their commitment to fight for a better future. In the wake of their efforts to uncover the hidden history of Ashland, Amara, Devon, Simone, Malik, and Zara found themselves at a crossroads. They had succeeded in bringing the story of the silent marches to light, but they knew that the fight for justice and equality was far from over. The echoes of the past continued to reverberate through the town, demanding their attention and action. The friends decided to stay in Ashland, dedicating themselves to the ongoing struggle for civil rights and social justice. They were determined to build on the momentum they had created and to work towards a more just and equitable future for all residents of the town. The friends gathered at a small community center, a place that had become a hub for their activities and a sanctuary for those seeking support and solidarity. The center was filled with the energy of people coming together, united by a shared vision of a better future. Amara, the high school teacher, focused her efforts on education and awareness. She developed a curriculum that incorporated the history of the silent marches and the broader struggle for civil rights in Ashland. She worked with other teachers to integrate this material into their lessons, ensuring that the next generation of students would learn about the town's past and its impact on the present. Amara also organized workshops and seminars, inviting scholars and activists to speak about issues of race, justice, and equality. Her goal was to create a space for dialogue and learning where students and community members could engage with these important topics and develop a deeper understanding of the challenges facing their town and their country. Simone, the journalist, continued to document the stories of the town's residents, focusing on the ongoing struggles for justice and equality. She wrote articles and produced multimedia pieces that highlighted the experiences of marginalized communities and the efforts of activists and organizers working for change. Her work gained national attention, drawing the eyes of the country to the little town of Ashland and its ongoing fight for civil rights. Simone's reporting was both powerful and nuanced, capturing the complexities of the issues at hand and the resilience of the people who were fighting for a better future. Simone also used her platform to amplify the voices of those who had been historically marginalized and silenced. She believed that storytelling was a powerful tool for change, and she was determined to use her skills to make a difference. Devon, the artist, found his work taking on a new dimension. His paintings, inspired by the silent marches, had become a symbol of the town's struggle for justice and equality. They were displayed in galleries and public spaces, serving as a reminder of the past and a call to action for the present. Devon also began to work on a new project, a series of murals that would depict the history and resilience of the Black community in Ashland. He collaborated with local artists and community members, creating a vibrant and powerful visual narrative that celebrated the strength and spirit of the town. The murals became a source of pride for the community, a testament to the power of art to inspire and unite. They also served as a reminder of the ongoing struggle for justice and the importance of continuing the fight for a better future. Malik, the community organizer, worked tirelessly to build coalitions and mobilize support for the cause of civil rights. He organized rallies, marches, and protests, bringing together people from all walks of life to demand change and accountability. His efforts helped to galvanize the community, creating a sense of solidarity and purpose among those who were fighting for justice. Malik also worked to build bridges between different groups and organizations, fostering a spirit of collaboration and unity. Through his work, Malik helped to create a powerful movement for change, one that was rooted in the history and experiences of the people of Ashland. He believed that the fight for justice was a long-term struggle, and he was committed to doing everything in his power to make a difference. Zara, the social worker, continued to provide support and resources to those who were affected by the ongoing struggles for justice and equality. She organized support groups, counseling sessions, and other services, helping people to cope with the challenges they faced and to find strength and hope in the face of adversity. Zara also worked to address the root causes of inequality and injustice, advocating for policies and programs that would promote equity and inclusion. She believed that social change required both immediate action and long-term vision, and she was committed to doing everything in her power to create a more just and equitable society. The Friends' work in Ashland was not without its challenges, but they remained committed to their vision of a town that honored its past while embracing the future. They knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult, but they were united in their determination to fight for justice, equality, and recognition.